If you're watching this at 10 a.m., congratulations. It means you're on daylight savings time. I'm Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, so how much of that nearly 3-year-long John Doe investigation into Governor Scott Walker's staff cost taxpayers? We don't know, and the DA's office isn't saying. John Chisholm's office says it doesn't keep track of the hours it spends on cases, so stay tuned. The state Democratic Party removes Graeme Zielinski as its spokesman, but keeps him on the payroll as a media advisor after Zielinski compared Scott Walker to Jeffrey Dahmer. The jobless rate drops to 7.7%. The stock market hits an all-time high. Brewer GM Doug Melvin is recovering from a scorpion bite. Don't you hate when that happens? Those automatic spending cuts kicked in and the world did not come to an end, but the White House tours were canceled. Venezuela's fiery anti-American strongman Hugo Chavez dies and Sean Penn goes into mourning. Senator Rand Paul stages a 13-hour talking filibuster over the use of drones to kill American citizens. We all switched our clocks forward last night, right? Daylight savings time begins. The legislature gave final approval to mining legislation. Sheriff David Clark apologizes on behalf of Milwaukee for Police Chief Ed Flynn's testimony on gun control at a Senate hearing. But we start with last week's charm offensive. Since that beer summit worked out so well, the president decided to try it on some Republicans. On Wednesday night, President Obama had dinner with 10 Republican senators, including Wisconsin's Ron Johnson. On Thursday, it was lunch with Paul Ryan. The overtures were unusual for a president who has been more comfortable campaigning than negotiating, but with his poll numbers dropping and Washington hopelessly deadlocked, it was time for at least some token bipartisanship and bread breaking. The two sides reportedly had a candid but cordial exchange, but it's less clear whether anything will come of the chats. Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel's Bill Glauber, Republican State Senator Leo Vukmir, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, and political consultant Mary Jo Bass. So on the spectrum of political showmanship and real negotiation, where do you put the charm offensive, Bill?
I put it at Washington is high school, as Meg Greenfield once said, and it's amazing how easy these guys are. Invite them out to one dinner and they swoon a little bit, but it was probably a necessary thing, and it'll probably pay dividends sometime down the line.
Yeah, but what are the dividends? I mean, are we going to have a grand bargain? Are we ever going to get to a position where, in fact, they're not yelling at each other? There actually are solutions to these problems, like entitlement reform?
I think step by step they're making progress, and you know the Republicans promised not to shut down the government, so we're making progress. I would want to have been on the fly on the wall at the lunch that Ryan and the president had. That would have been the interesting one.
Okay, so Leah Vukmir, how much of this is show, how much of it is for real?
Call me a cynic, but pure political posturing. That was how I took it. If he was serious, he'd have a plan. He'd come forward with a plan to show them. It's clear that it's been over 1,400 days. The Senate Dems still have not introduced a budget. So for me, it's just show.
Michael Holt, are you as cynical as Leah Vukmir?
For the most part, you know, the president is at least taking the initiative. He is saying, come into my house and let's have a civil conversation. I won't cuss at you because my mouth will be full and your mouth will be full. Maybe we can come to some consensus that the American people are more important than these partisan politics.
Okay, Mary Jo Bass.
I think it's up to the public. If just having dinner means that Obama's polls rise, he's going to quit there and call it a victory. If it's not enough, if his polls continue to drop and he's got to actually show some progress, then we'll see progress.
Okay, I mean, what you have here is a choice between believing the picture on television and the dinner and the lunch versus everything we've seen from this president and this Congress over the last, 4 years, which is, is more important. Look, he had a chance to reach out after the election. He had a chance to reach out before with his inaugural. He had a chance during the fiscal cliff. He had a chance during, up to the sequester. And in every single case, the president has resisted the effort to move to the center to negotiate in good faith. He's obviously far more interested in campaigning, in demonizing the Republicans, in running it for 2014. So to believe that somehow this dinner and this lunch changes that dynamic, I think you have to be ridiculously naive to do that. Because this is not Bill Clinton. We have a guy who is a true believer who up until this week was focused on running a perpetual campaign to get his way.
You expect him still to lead, and that's the bottom line. We expect the president to lead. He hasn't, and Ron Johnson, I think, said it best. He said, why is this even an issue? Isn't the president supposed to be meeting with other leaders?
Now maybe I am too cynical, like Lee here, but would this have happened if the public had in fact gotten freaked out? He invested a lot of energy in trying to scare people about the sequester. The public didn't buy it. They started making fun of him on Saturday Night Live. His poll numbers dropped into the mid-low 40s. Would this have happened without that happening?
I'm not sure, but they both need a deal. Congress also needs a deal as well as the president. I honestly think they're moving step by step towards a deal.
What did you think of the decision to shut down the White House tours?
Well, that was kind of preposterous, wasn't it?
And did it backfire on the president?
I think so. And you know, I mean, I think eventually the sequester is going to hit at some point I mean, the defense contractors certainly got a scare. I know that for a fact because I know some folks who were facing layoffs. They're not now. So, I mean, honestly, I think that both sides have probably misplayed their hand, and I think they're both trying to recover.
I think the president very clearly misplayed his hand on that one because
give him 3 months.
Well,
give him 3 to 4 months. That's when some of these reductions are going to really hit home.
But on the
and
White
everybody's
House,
going to be
see,
crazy.
you know what the comeback is on this? If we don't have enough money for the White House tours, how do we have enough money, taxpayer money, to send you on another golf outing or another trip to Martha's Vineyard? And I think that what happened was that we now began focusing on what are the government's priorities, what does the government actually spend money on? Okay, so what has your glass half full, what has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. We'll start with you, Bill.
The new superintendent of the House of Correction in Franklin, Michael Hafman, got the job. Unfortunately, Sheriff David Clark's not letting you in the facility. Welcome to Milwaukee County.
Leah Vukmir.
Glass half full. I'm very pleased that Governor Walker has in his budget included an expansion of the school choice program and also for across the state and for special needs. But, you know, disappointed, glass half full, that
empty.
Spin and falsehoods, empty, spin and falsehoods are controlling the debate among some Republicans.
Okay.
Very disappointing.
Michael Holt.
Half full. The Assembly and Senate signed on to the binding legislation is on the governor's desk. Half empty because it's going to be greeted by 5 or 6 different lawsuits.
Okay, Mary Jo Bass.
My glass is half full because Hugo Chavez is no longer president of Venezuela. My glass is half empty because it's going to take a lot of hard work to bring real democracy back to our southern neighbor.
Well, my glass is half full because the unemployment rate dropped down to 7.7%. It's half empty because more than 89 million Americans still are out of work. Still ahead on Sunday Inside, how far is too far for a party spokesman? As we go to break, what brought Rand Paul's filibuster to an end? Here's some insight.
And I would go for another 12 hours to try to break Strom Thurmond's record, but I've discovered that there are some limits to filibustering, and I'm going to have to go take care of one of those in a few minutes here.
Well, the fallout from the John Doe continued last week. Shortly after the DA's office announced it was shutting down the investigation without any more charges, the official spokesman of the state Democratic Party, Graeme Zielinski, sent out tweets comparing Governor Scott Walker to Milwaukee's notorious mass murderer, Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, Zielinski was notorious for his attacks on Republicans, accusing them of criminal activity, racism, sexual misconduct on a regular basis, but this time, apparently he crossed the line. On Monday, he was reportedly removed as spokesman and docked a week's pay, but he will remain on the party payroll as a quote-unquote media advisor. Meanwhile, a Washington reporter wrote about what he called the year's biggest fake story, the widely circulated reports during the recall campaign that Walker was about to be indicted. Writer Sean Higgins writes in the Washington Examiner, Democratic recall candidate Tom Barrett made the investigation of the ex-aides the focus of his final debate with Walker. Zielinski told me flat out in an interview at the time that Walker's indictment was imminent. Numerous left-leaning outlets ran with the stories, including speculation about possible charges. So I guess the question is whether or not, A, the Democratic Party has learned anything from this experience, and B, whether or not the media has learned anything from this experience.
Well, the Democrat Party hasn't learned anything, and there's nothing really to learn, because as long as the press and the public continue to accept his comments, they're going to continue to make them because he gets in the press. The Journal-Sentinel, in the same edition where they criticized or they supported his firing, in another story, they used his quotes and his comments. So he is still a recognized spokesperson for the Democrat Party, and he still gets some press.
Okay, Bill Glover.
You know, I'm the only one on this panel who's actually worked with Graeme. He used to work at the Journal-Sentinel. He's an interesting guy. A lot of times he swings and misses. Sometimes he swings and connects. And I know Senator Vukmir, what's interesting is that he gets into the heads of Republicans. I remember the pro-Scott Walker rally in Hart Park. Senator Vukmir and several others from the platform mentioned Graeme by name. He was holding a demonstration. So he's a lightning rod, does his job well sometimes and sometimes
But I mean,
doesn't.
this is a guy who's pushed the line for a long time. Why the Dahmer tweets? Why did Mike Tate, the chairman of the party, decide to get rid of him after that, given all the other stuff he's done?
I think that was probably just a tweet too far. I mean, I laugh about it, but it truly was. I remember seeing the tweets that day and wondering, you know, where this was going to go.
Okay, but now we know that he was telling reporters, either on the record or off the record, that Scott Walker was about to be indicted. And you're a reporter. When somebody gives you information that turns out to be false, do you ever hold them accountable for that? Should we hold the media accountable for not the Journal-Sentinel, but some of the left-wing outlets accountable for running with that story?
Well, I think you never saw that story in the Journal-Sentinel. The Journal-Sentinel never wrote that the governor was about to be indicted.
Correct.
So I can't speak for others. All I know is the way we covered that story, and we never once wrote that he was about to be indicted.
But the spokesman for the party was obviously peddling that to reporters. Is there some point at which a reporter says, okay, you burn your credibility, I'm not listening to you anymore?
Well, I think as a reporter, you got to have your sources, and you got to be able to trust your sources and get better sources if that's the case.
Bill says that Graeme Zielinski got in your head.
No way did he get in my head. And this is the height of, hypocrisy here, is that, they didn't even get rid of him. So he went from being the communications director to a media advisor. He was given a slap on the wrist for the things that he has done, and most recently.
Yeah, but he's been banned from Twitter, which means that they have a media advisor who is banned from social media. Think about that. Now, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyway. Let's dish out some unsolicited advice. Bill Glover, you are first.
I think since they're running an early 20th century offense, the Badgers should just tack up the peach baskets at Kohl Center.
Leah Vukmir.
Well, my advice is to President Obama. President Obama, if you want some ideas on how to solve your budget problems, look to Wisconsin. We took a $3.6 billion budget deficit. We've turned it into a surplus. I'm fairly certain that Governor Walker and even I would sit down to dinner with you and give you the details.
Michael Holt.
To Mike Tate, the head of the Democratic Party, don't suspend Graeme Zielinski. Fire him. Kick his butt out of the office. Have nothing else to do with him.
Okay, Mary Jo Boss.
My advice is for the Senate Republicans, present company accepted. I think they need to start hashing out their dirty laundry behind closed doors, because people are starting to look at them as anti-Walker and wonder why we invested in getting a Republican majority.
Yeah, I want to see more of their dirty laundry out in public. My unsolicited advice, Mr. President, if we can't afford to have White House tours, we can't afford to send you on another vacation. One word advice: staycation. Coming up on Sunday Insight. As we go to break, the latest word, but probably not the last word, in the bickering between Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark and Milwaukee Police Chief Ed Flynn.
Listen, I'm not bickering with anybody. I do actual police work. He doesn't, all right? The bickering is one-sided. One guy writes letters, another person heads a major law enforcement agency that makes 10,000 felony arrests a year.
Well, finally, Wisconsin's open for mining. The Assembly gives final approval to legislation that opens the way for iron ore mining in northern Wisconsin. Now, opponents warned of environmental damage. Supporters said that it would create thousands of good-paying jobs for generations. The bill now goes to Governor Walker's desk for his signature, but that doesn't mean the fight is over. Native American tribes are opposed, environmental groups threaten lawsuits, and there are, of course, an army of regulators. So, looking ahead, Senator Vukmir, is this mine ever really going to happen?
I believe it will. Best case scenario, if let's say we don't have any regulatory issues, we don't have any lawsuits, of course, that's not going to happen.
Right.
3.5 years.
Okay, but that's not going to happen.
But so I would add another couple years. But it will happen, and we will make sure it happens.
Okay, Michael Holt?
It might be a lot longer than that, because you're going to have lawsuits from 3 or 4 different entities coming at you at the same time. I would not be surprised if it goes back to the legislature and y'all twinkle and twist it a little bit and change some things around so you'll be in compliance with some of their concerns.
That ain't going to happen.
No.
I think we're definitely going to see the lawsuit, no question about that. But I think when you look at the probability of success of those lawsuits, it's not going to be there. There's going to be progress in the meantime. The company doesn't have to wait until the last lawsuit is finished to start moving ahead and investigating how the process is going to work and hiring people and ramping up for the process.
Okay, Bill Glover.
Can I admit something?
Yeah.
I know nothing about mining.
Yeah.
I know nothing about the environmental laws and so I look at this and I think a lot of the public actually knows not very much other than there is going to be a lot of lawsuits. They're going to be complicated and they're not going to understand the outcomes as they go along. It's going to be a big education issue for the state. I'm serious.
I agree with you. And in fact, listening to a lot of the debate, you know, that was my same impression, that a lot of the members of the legislature didn't know what they were talking about. I mean, the reality is that mining is not a radical new thing. We've done this before. We obviously need raw materials. These are our raw materials. We have had iron ore minings in the past. We have done it, and we can do it without violating the environment or the sanctity of the pristine waterways. What I find really extraordinary, though, is the fact that not one Democrat in the legislature, in the Senate or the Assembly, voted in favor of this. Now, you know, all of the rhetoric about jobs and putting people back to work and middle-class jobs, union jobs, we make mining equipment. Why is this such a hard sell?
I cannot understand how they can go back to their districts, especially those that are up in Iron County. You know, I've been through that area. There are some very blighted areas. They could use those jobs, and really they were completely taken over by the special interest groups that got in their ear and
those from
they were
Milwaukee would
relentless.
be quick to say that it doesn't impact us.
Well, of course it does. What do you think the Cyrus makes? What do you think those companies make? Caterpillar. Joy Global.
They're going to say it does not impact the local constituents. They don't get away with that.
It is every bit as absurd for a Milwaukee legislator to oppose this legislation as someone north. Those good manufacturing industrial jobs are exactly what Milwaukee needs, and those are the jobs that are really going to be important with the success of this mine.
The senator spoke about a public interest group, but didn't the ultimate public interest group actually write the legislation? The firm?
Well, I mean,
They didn't write the entire thing. Come on, Bill. You are being a cynic.
Yeah.
Certainly,
but you know what? At some point, I mean, if you're going to invest $1 billion, and this will be the largest private sector investment, you probably ought to be able to say to the state, okay, what is it going to take for us to feel that we can do this? And it doesn't change the environmental standards. It just changes the permitting process so that if you're going to ask someone to invest $1 billion, at least they know when they're going to get an answer. Okay, is this what they said this week? And what did you hear? What did they say? What you heard, Bill Glover?
Sheriff David Clark said he wasn't seeking publicity on his gun stand. What I heard is he went on talk radio for 3 hours.
Leah Hookmer.
Representative Brett Halsey said he just wanted to teach his staff self-defense using a box cutter, and the only reason that he is being investigated is because he opposed the mining bill. What I heard, here's a guy with serious trouble that should look in the mirror before blaming others.
Okay, Michael Holt.
Back to my previous one. Mike Tate told Graeme Zielinski that we're tired of you making these off-the-cuff remarks and gave him a slap on the wrist. What he really said was, we're changing your title so you can shoot from behind the back.
Okay, Mary Jo Boss.
When asked whether the president had the authority to use a weaponized drone to kill an American on American soil who's not involved in combat, he said, no. What I heard was, uncle.
What I heard was the president say, hey, let's have dinner and let's have lunch. What I heard was my poll numbers in the crapper and I need to change the narrative. Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. But first, here's your morning news update. It's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Bill Glover, you're first.
The winner, Mike Ellis, this old Senate lion, still knows how to call the shots on education, at least for now. The loser, Brett Halsey, the state rep from Madison, brought a box cutter into the State House and sliced and diced his reputation.
Leah Hookmer.
Winners, unemployed workers. With the passage of the mining bill, family-supporting jobs will be created not only in the north but throughout the state. A number of southeastern Wisconsin manufacturing companies will be able to hire additional employees due to the demand for mining equipment. Losers, the Government Accountability Board. For the second straight general election, the GAB has failed to update the state's voter list by the deadline set in state law. This will leave countless names on voting rolls throughout the state that It should be stricken and continues the agency's non-commitment to eliminating voter fraud.
Michael Holt.
Well, you could thank me later on. After I went on a rant last week about gasoline prices, they dropped 30 cents a gallon. Keep those cards and letters coming. my losers, U.S. Supreme Court is now looking seriously at the Voting Rights Act, and they're particularly interested in one part they call racial entitlements, which mean they're going to weaken this legislation. That's bad for all of America.
Mary Jo Boss.
My winner this week is Senator Rand Paul, who used a good old-fashioned filibuster to force answers to some very uncomfortable questions from Eric Holder, and got them. My loser this week is State Representative Brett Hulsey of Madison. Allegations of weapon possessions and erratic behavior from his own staff have completed his descent from promising young talent to ineffective flake to just plain creepy weirdo.
Well, I agree. My winner, you have to hand it to Rand Paul. His 13-hour filibuster was high drama, Mr. Smith goes to Washington stuff. But it was also important, forcing the administration to say, no, we don't have the power to order the drone killings of Americans on American soil. My loser, Judge Thomas Wolfgram, is supposedly a nonpartisan judge in one of the state's most Republican counties, Ozaukee County. It turns out, though, that he signed a Scott Walker recall petition and has been having a hard time explaining why. Now he's bailing out on a debate that he'd previously promised to attend. Are there some questions you'd rather not answer, Judge? Thanks for joining us and joining me for my radio show Monday morning on News Radio 620 WTMJ from 8:30 until noon. Have a great week.